Welcome to the Tesla Beat podcast. This is week number 33. I know we've had some hiccups in the past couple weeks because of the Cybertruck delivery event and then also Thanksgiving. And then even we had the Starship launch. So we've had a lot happening over the past couple weeks. So truly appreciate all of you just bearing with us as we kind of navigate the holiday season, and obviously a lot happening in the Elon company space. So thank you again for tuning in. We want to catch you up on everything again this week. And we may see Amy today, but we'll see. But we also have a special guest who has been on our podcast before. We have Hans Nilsson joining us. What's up, Hans?
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. Thank you for joining us this week. I know, I think Joe, before me and Joe and you, even Hans, were talking before Jeff came. It's like every week we get up here and we're like, what's going to happen next week? And just, this company just continues to release and innovate at such an amazing clip. And all of these partnerships and everything that this company is doing continues to just drop on us each week. So it's pretty exciting. But let's get into it. So thank you, Hans, for joining us again. He should be tagged on X, and if you're watching on YouTube, he's in the special guest description. So just go down there if you would like to follow him. But let's get into it. All right. So obviously a big week. We had Optimus revealed. We'll get into that in a little bit. Quick spotlight under the Tesla stock. It's at $253, up 134%, and year to date. And I think year over year, it's up about 70%. And I think actually, for better or worse, someone I think put out a stat of the 3-year outlook. I think it actually has not gone up much in the past 3 years. But again, that's just a quick spotlight on the stock. So just to kind of preview that. One thing I know we're not necessarily starting out Tesla related, but I know this is kind of just an overhang, I would say, over on the whole electric vehicle industry, has been this fake news, I would say, in a lot of ways, of like how, just the EV story has really slowed down. People don't want EVs. And obviously you even see it here with Ford having the F-150 Lightning production targets for 2024. I think almost by 50%. And so I thought, we could go maybe do a quick round robin, but this has kind of been a theme. I would say probably, I think even Ford stock popped because this is what the market wanted to see, but this has been a theme, pretty much probably the past 4 or 5 months, if not longer. But yeah, let anyone feel free to just jump on that news when they heard that break.
Yeah, it's not really my expertise, but I will say that there's a lot of times when dealing with things that are related around Mr. Musk, that there's always a narrative that's spun by the mainstream media that whether there's always some problem, and demand has always been a thing, right? But then you see these things actually not affecting Tesla, and in part actually affecting all these other companies. And it's just like, man, when will you guys stop with the narrative? So, I mean, it sucks to see that happen. I know there's a lot of good people that are probably out of work, but the other spin on that, which I'm pretty sure as Hans or Jeff will probably get into, is that Tesla can hire these people. They just continue to have openings and continuing to go forward. So it's just going to be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, a couple of things on this into Joe's point. This is mostly telegraphed. If you look at their, what they're actually quote unquote selling in the dealerships, it's only a few thousand a month. In fact, I think November was, in the media was touting as their best month. I think it was around 4,000 of the trucks. And remember, these are sales into dealerships, but what's happening here is they have their unit economics position on this truck has them in a place where they don't have a trajectory to massive volume scale. They don't have a trajectory to break even on this particular design. This design is too complex. The way it's tooled up, the way it's fundamentally designed, it's so complex that if they were to try to get this from 4,000 a month to 25,000 a month, I'll make up a number. They still wouldn't have a significant improvement, and they would be essentially accelerating their losses. So this is what I predicted this over the last year. Of they're basically going to bide time between now and their next major fundamental massively redesigned truck that's supposedly due in a couple of years. So they really can't build this product in scale. So this is what you're going to see. You're going to see it kind of trickle along. The inventory went up to, in some cases over 100 days, some cases up to 200 days of inventory, and they try to keep around 50 as their target. So all the signs were there. And finally, I think to Joe's point about the media narrative. So, obviously rates have taken a turn in the favorable direction for large purchases like autos. It's still a long way to go. But between what the Fed has signaled and what the bond markets have already done, that narrative of, EV adoption slowing. And this is the final point I wanted to leave with, is if you look at that narrative, if you actually graphed EV adoption quarterly over the last 3 years, you will find that there are quarters that, where there's a quarter on quarter decline. But if you stretch it out and look at it over an annual basis, it continues to go up and to the right. So when we have this 24/7, minute by minute news media cycle, everybody's kind of pounding this narrative every day, every hour for the last, several weeks or a couple of months. But if you're able to step back and look at just recent history over the last couple of years, there are quarters where there's a quote unquote slowdown, but then it kind of reaccelerates again. That's been the pattern. Not saying that pattern repeats, but it's not correct to just kind of microanalyze, one quarter movement. It's not even a significant slowdown either. So, yeah, I think they're getting beat by Rivian. They're seeing the Cybertruck coming, and the more I think I calculated, if they were to build 90,000 EVs in a quarter, they would wipe out all of their profits from their ICE business. So hence the fact that they've got to put a lid on EV production for now. And this is what you're going to see going forward, I think, for a couple of years from the competition.
Yeah, and I would just add to that. I think their goal was to be producing 3,200 vehicles a week, and they're scaling that back to, I think, 1,600. That 3,200 a week translates to over 13,000 F-150s per month, which is, basically 3 times what they sold in November into dealer lots. And then I don't think dealers sold anywhere near that same number to customers. And so, yeah, they're just building up this excess inventory, and they're not seeing customer adoption of the F-150 Lightning kind of keeping up with their growth in production. And, I think this really comes back to, just like Jeff said, they don't really want to sell these. The EV or the Ford dealers don't want to sell these. Ford doesn't want to accelerate their losses on them. The design, while it's a pretty decent customer experience, it's not that much better than a normal F-150. And this is a point that I love that Dave Lee has made for a long time. When you are trying to disrupt a product category, you need to come in with something that's not just like a little bit better than the existing technology in order to get people to adopt it. It needs to be much, much better, or have something that is massively different about it that is able to capture customer attention. And so that is something that we do see with the Cybertruck, both from the ground up redesign of the way the truck is made, from the structural castings to the 48-volt architecture to steer by wire, and then the stainless steel outer construction. So it looks different, and it's just different from the ground up. It's a complete rethink of what a truck is. Now, some people will love it, some people will hate it, but it will be adopted because it is something that is dramatically different than what came before. Whereas this F-150 Lightning is just an incremental change from, they're just trying to swap out, a gas engine for a battery pack. And we've never really seen that strategy be super successful in getting massive customer adoption. And it's, kind of, while it's a laudable effort by Ford and they're moving in the right direction, it's not going to be the thing that actually competes in the marketplace and is able to survive when they're going up against someone like Tesla.
Yeah, I would agree with all of those points. I think all three of you made really good points on different aspects. I think Ford, especially too, like I think we're still in the very beginning stages of the indicators of how Cybertruck will change the trucking industry. But I think, at least the signal for me, at least when you talk to other people, obviously they may not like the design, but most of even truck people, at least now that the specs are out, sure, it doesn't have all the range that it originally touted, but when you just compare it against the specs, they all recognize that this is a very tough vehicle. It's going to be able to handle. It's going to be super durable, low maintenance, and also too, it's going to be rugged. You're going to be able to pretty much do whatever the heck you want with the thing. Take a steel chair, whack it against it. Your kids can throw rocks at it. I mean, like you name it, you'll be able to. Or if you need to go through brush, like I took my Honda Pilot probably like 4 or 5 years ago off-roading through some of the Sierra Nevada things, and I did get one scratch that stayed. I mean, a lot of it was brush, but just like you'll be able to go through thick brush. This is going to be, in my opinion, the definition of a truck outside of the look. So when you remove the look aspect from it, it's going to be the definition of a truck. And in my opinion, even the Ford options that you have, even at the base model, 240 miles, that's not really a drivable truck. I mean, you start towing that's going to be maybe 120, 150 miles at best. And so it's just one of those things where EVs have to be more than 300 miles. Hopefully, actually we're starting to get to a point maybe where they'll get to 400 miles. I know, I believe Sandy Monroe was interviewing one of the execs, and they were saying something like they wanted to, instead of putting more cells, they wanted to put more cells in other cars so that they could, have more adoption. But in my opinion, it's just like, it's better to set the standard. But either way, when it comes to a truck, I think Tesla dropped the gauntlet. They dropped the mic. They dropped the mic to just say, this is what a truck should be, period. And I really don't think Ford, like by the time Ford starts producing them, they will have literally given the market to the Cybertruck, in my opinion, to Rivian and to anyone else that's gonna pretty much come up in the next couple of years if they continue to do this. So that's my opinion. Ford is, as much as they've been a leader, this is a big L for them in my opinion. Even if the dealerships don't like it, I would rather continue to take losses to make sure that we gain market share or get our vehicles out there than being short-term focused. And that's the problem, I think, with a lot of these legacy autos and even companies today, is they can be short-term focused. They can react to the market. Like if everyone else is laying off, well, we should lay off to get that 2 or 3% bump or whatever, those things that other companies are doing, rather than being long-term focused. And sure, your stock is going to take a hit, but just for a 3 to 5% bump, or I don't know. But a lot of that stuff is just nearsighted, in my opinion. And the Cybertruck, once they start hitting even, potentially even by the end of next year, if they can hit 100,000 vehicles produced per year, they're just going to be steamrolling through all of this. Fleet trucks, I think, are going to be converted. Anything that has deals with F-150s, I think a lot of those are going to slowly start converting potentially to Tesla. Again, it's just, unless Ford does something, if 2024, a year is a lot of time from now, in my opinion, especially in the EV space, especially when you take what Tesla's going to do. So slowing down your EV production for the F-150 is probably, in my opinion, the worst call right now. Unless literally you can't sell it, unless it's like a Lucid thing, which I think, Jeff, you alluded to, they were having 100, 200 days worth of inventory, but slowing it down is not the right call, in my opinion.
Well, they could sell it if they could drop the price, but the problem is that they just don't have the cost structure. And I'd love to hear, Jeff, your thoughts on this, because I know this is an area where you've spent a lot of time and have deep understanding. But just because right now the prices of the Lightning and the Cybertruck, like the Cybertruck's higher for the Foundation and the Founder series, but eventually it'll come down. But then if you look at long term, I don't expect the prices of the Cybertruck to stay at the 100, 80, and 60. I think that once we get into 25 or beyond, as they really reach volume scale, they're able to ride a cost curve to where their cogs on this vehicle are going to come down dramatically below what the F-150 is able to be produced at. And that allows them to have pricing power in the marketplace and to really offer far. So it's, a better overall vehicle on a number of dimensions. The engineering is just far and away better. The product is simpler. And so if they're able to do all of those things while delivering a vehicle at significantly lower price in the long term at a terminal rate than the Ford F-150 Lightning, I mean, it's kind of game over. It seems like Ford is not going to be able to ever produce the Lightning at prices that are significantly lower than the prices that they have currently. Maybe a little bit, but not anywhere close to what would take to keep up with the Cybertruck cogs.
Yeah, it's
I mean, that's sorry, Joe.
No, I was just gonna say, like, for anybody who is not aware, when you start looking at the prices of trucks right now, like, I mean, to even think that the Cybertruck was going to come out at 40,000 is like not even realistic. I mean, I can only imagine the cogs. I know Jeff's going to get into it, but holy cow, man!
Well, I mean, if you look at when Tesla announced the Cybertruck in 2019, and you look at the tonnage price of steel, it's up anywhere from like 35 to 50% from that point in 2019 to where we are today. So you've had commodity inflation, you had overall inflation occur. But in terms of like where Tesla's at today, they're building product at very low volumes. Their cogs are super high right now. The utilization of that pilot line or that line that's installed is very low. And so now it's just, their cogs are significant. But when you think about cogs, you think about launch, you think about lifetime, and you think about terminal, like where you think you can get it to. And when you think in those three buckets, I view the Cybertruck, I believe Tesla designed the Cybertruck to be just a bit higher than the Model Y in terms of cost structure, because there are real like added features in these things that don't exist in a Model Y, including its construction. But it's well below Model X. So they've taken this huge step down in cogs for something today they have to sell for around $180 to $100,000 today with this Foundation series. But the actual core cost structure of this thing is probably going to be just above, the Model Y, with obviously with some added cost, but well below Model X. And yeah, over time, but the thing with Cybertruck is we're going to be in this mode, I think, for at least a year and a half, if not more. Of its, Tesla will be able to lower their cogs. Like they're going to get the peak utilization over that time period, and their gross margins are going to improve significantly. But the other thing that dictates pricing is obviously demand. And as long as they're clearing product at those higher cost structures, there's not going to be a charity. You're not going to lower it for charitable reasons. They're going to keep their cost structure high as demand is up there. So you'll have those two components battling. I think demand is going to be high for some period of time. You look at the reviews on the product; the reviews are pretty much stellar in terms of that. So yeah, I think launch cogs, very high, very slow pace of production, no different than any other product. But Hans is right, and and I've said this, the F-150. You think about unit economics. You think about what is the cost to build one of these things, and the F-150. There's really not much that they can do from a scale perspective to take their cost structure meaningfully down further. So they're in this window of they launched a product almost 2 years ago. And that's the other thing that people do. And I've made this point in another video, is they compare Cybertruck pricing to Rivian and F-150. And Rivian F-150 have had time in market of 20, 24 months, and Tesla's at time equals 0. So give Tesla that 20 to 24 months to ramp their supply chain to get the peak run rate. And you're going to have, from a COGS perspective, they'll be able to take their cost structure down significantly. Whereas, Rivian today, they've made progress, but they're still losing 30,000 per vehicle, and Ford's still losing just over 30,000 per vehicle a couple years into production. That's where the breakage is. It's fundamental in terms of decisions they made, what's in, what's not in the product, and their approach to design and manufacturing. So in short, Cybertruck's got a good future ahead of it once it gets to scale.
No, for sure. It's I could see. I mean, don't hold me to this, but I could see the what is it, beast mode? It's at 100,000. Obviously once we get past this foundation series, I could see it being in 2 years at like 85. I mean, that's just how cutthroat these guys are. And once you're talking and then you get maybe with the range extender, you're back at 100,000, but that's a 450, 470 mile range truck. Or who knows, maybe they've made efficiencies within then to change that. But I could see them cutting the prices in 2 years alone by 15,000 easily.
Yeah, and one more point to that, John and team, is when I look at like these price targets on Tesla and how Tesla is valuated and what should the multiple be, one thing that analysts do is they're very demand side driven. They're very sales. They're looking at sales and they're looking at earnings. And they really give Tesla's supply chain like a 0. And Tesla's supply chain is, in Gartner's a very respected supply chain firm. They, rated the 14th best supply chain in the world, the best auto supply chain. By the way, there's no auto company ahead of that. And the reason I'm making this point is Tesla's supply chain today is better than those other auto supply chains. They have better inventory. They have better COGS decline rates. Everything you would, I'm assuming much better excess and obsolescence with the fewer models. Like you just have a much better supply chain today. Now, when you start thinking about Cybertruck a year or two from now, you have to think about where's Tesla going to be a year or two from now from a leverage perspective in the supply base. They're going to have they're designing a car right now that's going to be double the volumes of what their entire portfolio is building today. That model, that 25K model, and they're in the process of getting to a final design on the bot. And I'm assuming they're selecting suppliers on the bot. So just think of the scale of the company. Right now, the company today builds around 2 million widgets. But think of the company 2 years from now. They're gonna have a capacity of probably building 5 million, and they're gonna have orders on suppliers for higher volumes of bot and all these other categories. They're going to be from a gross purchasing power perspective, they're going to maybe double or triple in the next couple of years. And this isn't really like far out thinking. It's just following the EV adoption curve and following what they're doing with this new model. So they're right now they're in this transition point of like Model 3, Model Y, S, and X, and they're rolling out the Cybertruck. But out ahead of it on the horizon is suppliers selected for the 25K model. They're in the process of probably doing that for the bot right now. And they're going to be starting to put long-term orders and long-range forecasts on these suppliers. And that's going to drive a tremendous amount of leverage to Cybertrucks that are getting built this quarter, next quarter, and beyond, because suppliers are going to be fighting for that business. So just the company's going to go through a very significant, I believe, volume transition. And they already have. By the way, 3 years ago, they were shipping 500,000 widgets a year. Now they're shipping 2 million widgets a year. So, I mean, you're going to see that movement's going to give them tremendous leverage.
Totally. Thanks for dropping the knowledge, Jeff. All right. So we probably shouldn't spend the whole call talking about Ford.
Yeah.
Well, we shared some snippets on Tesla, but let's hit some other stuff as well. So let's hit the recall. I think this is probably for us Tesla fans. We all know, we've been there, done that, especially over the years. Tesla's on always under scrutiny, under the limelight, and this is obviously one of them, especially whenever a recall happens. But for the majority of the public, they don't know a lot of, or have a lot of the insights that we have, maybe as Tesla owners or as enthusiasts. So it's just one of those things where I think it's always important to at least address. So this week, I believe it was like 2 million recalls happening. 2 million Tesla vehicles are being recalled due to a couple things on autopilot to kind of make a change there. But I think what people don't realize is that, all of this stuff can actually be taken care of with a software update, right? Like in the same way, right? I spent, I don't even remember what, $1,500 on the iPhone 15 Pro Max, and the thing was overheating. And I thought that maybe that was normal. But when all that happened weeks later, it was like, okay, they finally released a software update and the whole thing was fixed. It doesn't overheat anymore. But it did break the news, but it didn't get as much coverage as this. People don't start texting you, hey, is your phone overheating? If you actually look at the middle image, this is something we did, me and this company called AdQuick. They actually had paid for the ad, so shout out to AdQuick for doing this. They took over Times Square, and it was literally like a tweet that said an over the air update isn't a recall. So I wish the NHTSA would just change like what a recall is, whether it's a like over the air update or if it's like a hard recall because of like the actual vehicle, like a hardware issue. Because every single time this happens, I think even Rohan, who is a Tesla employee, said this on a post, that now we're going to have to send out 2 million letters, physical letters. I mean, Canada's figured this out, but the US is going to have to send out 2 million, and it's just going to, waste a bunch of paper and postage. But yeah, obviously we don't have to spend too much time on this. We should jump into the Optimus, but what are your guys' thoughts on this?
Well, I think this goes along with like the negative narrative that people love to spin on anything that involves around Mr. Musk. And it sucks to say that because the company itself is great, right? And all the employees are doing a really good job. But this is kind of adjacent, I guess. This is why I love X. So on that platform, the FCC, the one of the representatives of FCC was on, and he talked with a stock, what's his name? Stock guy, I can't remember. But
Stock Talk?
Yeah. So, and he was answering a whole bunch of questions, and he highlighted like a why Musk is under fire, right? And it all stems from like something the president said at one time, and it was like, like just like that sort of thing. And it's just a pain point for me to see an American company kind of like treated this way as I mean, history will be the victor of how this all plays out anyways. I mean, Ford's in second place, and they are like in a far distant second place when it comes to like the sales of like EVs. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you cannot deny the facts, and people keep trying to spin their own narrative on history. And the facts are just the facts. And it's crazy that they highlight this negative narrative around the recalls. And yeah, of course, NHTSA needs to change their terminology, but the facts are still the facts. I mean, like the Tesla account put out that great worded essay on fighting FUD the other day. They didn't do that for this. They should have. So, I mean, that's just things that Tesla can do that they need to take action on. So that's what I have to say.
Anyone else want to jump in on the recall, or not much to say? All right, well, we can leave it at that. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the reality, is that, this recall, I would agree with Joe. Like, I think Tesla should put out something on what this means for customers, how this is different, and what this means, especially if they're going to rebuttal articles and other things like that. Because I would assume, in my opinion, that this is gonna something like this because is gonna do more damage than that article would, to be honest. So that's my thought. But yeah, let's get into the Tesla bot. So I think up until maybe yesterday or something, like the Tesla bot video actually was giving people copyright issues. So that's why we're not playing it today, is because we didn't want to get like any issues with copyright. I guess Univision was like claiming it as their video or something. But Tesla released a new update, specifically of the Optimus Gen 2. And man, was this thing, it was dancing. It was able to handle a delicate egg. It was walking. I mean, you name it, it was essentially doing it. But this is a huge update, especially when you think of it's been about 15 months since the reveal in Tesla AI Day back in September 30th of 2022. So this thing is getting so much better and able to do so much more than I think anyone would have thought in literally a matter of like 15 months. But I would love to get everyone's thoughts on what they saw in the video, potentially what continue to get thoughts on what this could mean for Tesla. Are you more bullish, less bullish? The good, the bad, the ugly.
Yeah, I think this is just one of those things that I mean, Tesla, right? Like 10 years ago, who would have thought that Tesla would be making robots and would be the behemoth they are in energy? And you know what I mean? Like, it just like they just keep moving the goalpost for what a company is and for what they can do. I love the Tesla bot LEDs. I think like the hands were great and all this type of stuff, but I like the fact that they added that LED strip, because that wasn't even in their original when they originally came out with that CG animation thing that they were showing what the future could be. Like, that wasn't added in there, but now you have this LED strip across the line, which creates a continuity. I saw someone saying over the weekend, and I think I think it was my Tesla weekend actually, and I think that just is great. Like, now you have the LED there, you have the LED in the Cybertruck, you have the LED in the Highland, and you know what I mean, like, and they're just doing it like across the board, and now you have this on Optimus, and I think I don't know what Jeff's going to say, but I'm curious if they've built enough of the supply chain for this to where like they can kind of move forward and start building like a series of these, like maybe 1,000 to, I mean, we saw 2 in a video, but as we know, like Tesla moves so fast. But by them putting a logo on it, it just seems to me like a kind of like not a finale, a final thing, but like a stake in the ground of where like, okay, we're here now. Let's go forward from here and make it do things.
Yeah, one of the comments that Elon normally makes or in interviews is when he's asked about a particular product under development is you'd want to hear him say that they're at design lock. That's a key term in the industry. And design lock doesn't mean like there's zero changes that can happen, but it means like they fundamentally understand how, the industrial design, the engineering, and how to manufacture this thing. And now it's just about getting everything ramped up and getting going. So I'd love to hear that. But you can look at what they're doing in terms of hiring kind of that NPI or pilot line of people and all the different resources between Nevada on the production side, and then the additional resources in the engineering side in California. And you can tell that they're ramping up engineering, they're ramping up technicians, people to do testing overnight. I saw some of the positions were for second shift, so they want to just continue. Basically, it's one of the great things you can do for capital efficiency prior to mass production is to use these prototypes basically 24/7 and do testing throughout the day and night. So yeah, they've got to get a supply chain up and going, and I think they're going to handle this in a very controlled rollout in stages. They're not just going to like press a go button and go 10,000, 100,000, 1 million. I think they're going to manage this in stages, put some product into their factories, and start, understanding it and debugging it in terms of, how it works for them, so they can get this thing fully debugged from a hardware, software, manufacturing perspective in Tesla factories in a very unarmed fashion, and then scale it from there. And this, like I said, I don't think any analyst really understands yet how to model this thing, and that's fine, because I mean, Tesla's given some guidance in terms of where they see this going from a trajectory perspective, but the timing is key. I just think what people aren't thinking about, and maybe many analysts are, is the volume scale implications the bot will have on the auto business itself and Tesla's other businesses. So they're just going to be a huge player from a scale perspective in the world. And so yeah, I'm looking forward to it. But I think we're ways away. They got to hire this team. They got to scale the engineering effort. They got to scale. You saw this picture; it's great. 150, and change of people or so that are in that photo, working on it. By the way, I asked Bard and I asked GPT-4 to count how many people are in that photo and give me a response, and neither of them can do it, which is interesting to me, because OCR, optical content or character recognition, has been around for decades, but it couldn't do it. To me, it drew a massive contrast to real world AI, and like for Tesla, it's navigating my 3-ton Model X, on streets, and it doesn't get, you don't really have an option for it to not give you an answer. And here you just tested a basic thing and it couldn't give you an answer. To me, it also tells me that Tesla's AI effort, both on the bot and what we're seeing the bot do now in these videos, and obviously with the car, are very underrated. But yeah, the supply chain implications on this are going to be massive. I think they'll build this globally. I don't think you want this thing where you're kind of like shipping these things all over the world. But I think they're also going to be pretty light, so it could be manageable. But I think they're going to get this up and going in a central factory, then rapidly scale it globally. But just one more thing, there will be a long kind of, I don't say long, but there's going to be this field application testing. This is what people need to understand. Like, this isn't just like it's done and it's this widget, it's done and it goes. They will have to develop and debug this thing. But I think it'll be maybe more rapid than we think, just with the advent of AI. But they're going to want to get this working in Tesla factories and really debug it. And I think that will be the first main use of this, is manufacturing use, and then it will scale beyond that. Thanks.
Yeah, I totally agree with Jeff on that. I think that, one of the things that really jumped out at me looking at the Gen 2 evolution is that it's just so much more refined than Gen 1 in so many areas. The movement obviously is much more fluid and coordinated. So that's a huge thing to notice, because that means they're making a lot of progress on the control algorithms. But man, the control of Optimus is the challenge. The robotics challenge is difficult, and they're making rapid progress in that. And I mean, for them to go to revealing this, even though on September in 2022, the Gen 1 Optimus couldn't even walk. They had the mechanical prototype in place, but it couldn't do anything yet. And it was there, but then they showed the Bumblebee version walking. But to move from that to then the demonstrations we saw over the course of this year with Gen 1, and then the yoga poses, I think that was just September or August or September of this year with the Gen 1 prototype, and then dropping this one in December. That's just the progress and the speed of progress. I just can't understate how fast this is. It's ridiculous. This team is an incredible team. The work that they're doing is bar none. Like, they're making progress further and faster than anyone else in the space. There's a lot of people that are going to say, hey, it's not doing any one thing better than anything else. But a lot of the things that it's competing against are one-trick ponies. And this is a very general platform that can do as good as a lot of the cutting-edge single-purpose things. And it can do all of those things already. And the path from here to there, is just so clear. When you add in the foundation models that they have from developing FSD and FSD's ability to understand the world around it, and the way that these foundation models work that allow you to just take literally the same neural net that was trained to do the occupancy network or interact with the real world from the FSD uh, automobile. You can take that and then you can add a whole new training set to it and then rerun training runs where you've already got a baked in understanding of the world around you that works pretty well. And then you're just fine tuning this model. So that training is much easier and much faster. And that's how they were able to actually get the bot to be so functional so quickly. And that's going to continue into the future. I think that looking at the way that Alpha Go and then Alpha Zero and then Mu Zero, that progression that DeepMind went through in order to develop these AI agents that were incredible at playing games is going to be instructive here. And that, AlphaGo, they use a lot of human examples in order to train their neural net system how to play Go. I think that we're going to see the same thing for the bot, is there's going to be a lot of human observation that goes on. And that's what Jeff was talking about that's going to happen in the factories, that they're going to do a lot of real work in-house. It's going to be kind of behind a curtain. We're going to see these presentations periodically. It's going to be like, wow, it's cool that it can do that thing, whatever that thing is. But we won't see them being delivered to massive numbers of customers. They're not going to ramp up production super, super fast while they're still getting all of the software dialed in. But once it really does have generalized intelligence and you can actually teach it by talking to it instead of having it do observation of a human through, them using one of the sensor arrays where a person is wearing all the sensors on their body and they've got the cameras on their head and they're doing all that kind of stuff. Once it can just look at a person and watch them perform a task and then they can repeat that task, that's where they'll want to really ramp up production and the progress of Optimus will just go parabolic.
I think my question is that kind of what they're doing now? Because like I know with FSD, I think Elon has stated when he did the FSD 12 overview, he was like, oh yeah, this thing didn't know how to do roundabouts or even traffic lights. We just fed it a bunch of videos. I think that's what's going to be crazy about how quickly this team is going to ramp, or already has been ramping.
There's two different ecosystems that we're talking about, or methods of training. So that training that Elon is talking about is happening, they're feeding it videos in a training center where you've got tens possibly of exaflops of compute that are doing these training runs. And what I'm talking about, where you could teach a bot how to do a task in person, that means that it has to do that learning on the edge in the inference compute. So just on a single FSD chip computer for it to do learning and adaptation. That's like a whole nother thing. Right now, all the learning happens in these massive supercomputer clusters. And in order for it to migrate from there into happening in person in real time is quite a forward shift. But it will be much more possible as the general model, that foundation model that the Optimus bot has, gets so good that it really understands how to do almost anything. And it's really just, okay, show me the sequence of what I need to do. That's something that it could learn easily as long as it understands the underlying fundamentals of how to do all those things.
Definitely. I think everyone hit on some amazing points about the Optimus. I mean, stuff that Hans and Jeff were getting into. Oh, you got to leave, Jeff?
I do soon. It was a great discussion. Appreciate all of you and everyone watching, and we'll catch up again soon.
All right. Thanks, Jeff, for your time. We'll
Thank
see
you,
next
Jeff.
time.
Thank you all. See you guys.
But yeah, so thank you, Jeff, for the time. We'll catch you hopefully next week. But yeah, I think everyone shared some amazing insights into the expectations of this bot, the insane acceleration. Also, ultimately, I think even Hans, you were alluding to like where they kind of need to get to. But I think of like it's interesting how Tesla is creating this bot, but it's based off of, let's say, you know, all the real world work that they've done on full self-driving. And then you have like Twitter, who is creating now X, creating a chat bot, Grok, you know, based off of this insane foundation. So it's crazy how both these companies had a foundation to work off of, and just now all they're doing is creating something. They're just creating something on top of something that was already built. Like Grok is being built on the world's best live database. I mean, it's insane that, like, you know, even Chat GPT, it's been around for a while. It's stuck as of 2 years ago. Even if they were to hook it up to, you know, Bing.com is still going to be somewhat late because people need to write articles. It's not real world live action happening, right? And now, like with the Tesla bot or with full self-driving, they have to do it in real time because kids are jumping out on the road, pedestrians are walking, dogs are jumping out and chasing a ball. This is all stuff that they have to do real time. So it's going to be really, really crazy to see how all these things ramp up, and even, you know, potentially when they start production on Optimus. All right, so let's hit with the last 12 minutes. I think let's just, you know, we can provide some commentary on some of the other big things that are happening in the Tesla space as well. Giga Mexico is finally a thing. They finally got the land use permits. This is a big deal because now they can actually start work. So it's been something, I think everyone was thinking that this was going to happen quicker than China. But that's kind of been far further from the truth, but exciting nonetheless, because this is going to be a big deal for building another factory, especially for them helping them get to, you know, potentially doing 20 million vehicles, or, you know, making a bunch more cars. So I don't know, was there any insights that you guys wanted to call out on this?
One of the implications of this that I think is really exciting, and sorry, Joe, we know that the $25,000 car is supposed to be produced in Austin first. And so if they're starting up the building in Mexico, which is only going to be producing the next generation vehicle, that means that it implies we should see deliveries of the next gen vehicle out of Austin before that Mexico building is complete, and significantly before, because they have to go ahead and start getting all of the equipment installed in there. And they're not going to install equipment in the Mexico Gigafactory, which they will do during the construction of the factory, until they've already tested that equipment and got that line figured out and their entire production system nailed down, at least the first iteration of it, there in Austin. And you can kind of think about this in light of the way that they did the Fremont 4680 cell pilot lines in Lathrop, and then they built those 4680 lines in Texas. That 25,000 K vehicle production in Austin is going to be to the Mexico plant what Lathrop was to the 4680 production in Austin.
Yeah, I think like that, along with everything else, like even with Optimus, thinking about the next generation vehicle, Tesla doesn't build things for like niche. I know people love to say that and they like to think that, but they build things for mass, and they I mean, their production, you know, I mean, is like bar none. So I think just knowing that even though they're going to start this pilot line, like Hans says, like in Austin, like it's going to be more of a copy and paste. I mean, freaking Austin is huge. The size of the manufacturing that they're probably going to do for that vehicle will probably be the size of the factory in Mexico. So just the fact that they can do that, and I mean, Jeff isn't here to speak on it, but I mean, they're probably nailing down these supply chains like right now. You know, I mean, just so they can start all of that, the processes and all the manufacturing, and this is going to be like that unboxing process. So I mean, you know, these people got to start building these machines now. You know what I mean? So that way they can do what they need to do in Austin before they cookie cutter it to Mexico, and then they can just, because you don't want to get to Mexico and have to wait on parts and processes and things like that to work out. You really want it to be able to hit the ground running, and I think that's why you have the whole Austin thing happening.
Absolutely. Yeah, I loved the in Walter Isaacson's biography where he talked about the fact that the reason that they decided to do the first pilot line in Austin versus in Mexico is just because it's a lot easier to keep all their engineers that are going to be troubleshooting that line as you get it ramped up. You know, there's all kinds of problems that you can't predict what they're going to be that pop up as you're ramping up a production line like that, and especially a new production process that Elon in his interview with Sandy said that is going to be unlike any other current auto manufacturer in the world has today. That's just going to blow our minds. So if you're doing something that's that cutting edge and that pioneering from a perspective of how the vehicle is manufactured and what that production system is, it's going to require, a lot of troubleshooting. And so they've got the talent that is the engineering team in Austin who can do, and they're probably going to be bringing in a bunch of people from California as well that are going to be there to actually help with that ramp up in Austin. And then, like you said, once they get it figured out, cookie cutter that and take it to Mexico. On the supply chain side, you can absolutely expect that the 25K vehicle is going to be using the 4680, the 48 volt architecture. Or sorry, it's not going to use the 4680. I don't expect. I think it'll be an LFP or LMFP pack. I meant to say the 48 volt architecture and steer by wire. And so by using those products in the Cybertruck, they're able to actually do a lot of quality testing, get those supply chains kind of primed and ready. But, even like I expect Cybertruck to sell dramatically more than 250,000 units per year once it gets fully ramped up. I'm thinking somewhere in the 300 to 500,000 units range, likely. And I think that is, Elon he's trying to learn how to under promise and over deliver. And I think that the Cybertruck production target is an under promise and over deliver dynamic. But they've already got all of those parts now that they've got all their supply contracts. These suppliers were having to ramp up these supply chains for the Cybertruck over the last year. And so that's just getting them going. But if you're going from something that's going to sell, even at maximum 500,000 units a year, and then you're going to use those same components in another vehicle platform that's going to sell 2, 3, 4 million units per year, like that's an order of magnitude more production that you have to deal with. And so it's great to actually use those components in a smaller volume product first so that those suppliers really have time to ramp up along with the 25K vehicle.
Yeah, what I was gonna say on we actually saw, and I think both of you probably should recall. Remember, there was like news articles about how they had set up some production, some parts of the actual Cybertruck production at Fremont. So I think that this is not new, and obviously, as Fremont, we all know is maxed out, and I don't know if they've moved over a ton of the. I would assume that a lot of the manufacturing engineers have potentially moved over to Austin. I know a lot of the software is still being handled in Fremont, or sorry, in Palo Alto. But it makes sense for them to, build it in Austin first. And who knows, at some point, they may even have a part of Giga Austin where it's only set up for new products, where they build out the production line, or at least the dummy ones, so that they can have it run through and make sure that everything, like all of the kinks, are worked out. And that may even become the hub, maybe not necessarily against Shanghai, because maybe even Shanghai, even Europe will have their own vehicles for those areas. But at least I know Austin will definitely become, one of the main ones where they build and build the production lines and work out all the kinks. But they always do it potentially 6 months, even to a year before they launch. I mean, we know that they've had 4 years to work on the Cybertruck. So I think they've been slowly producing them even since July, right? We know that. So it's one of those things where it's pretty clear that they're just trying to stay ahead of the curve, and doing it in Austin makes sense, because imagine something breaks in Mexico, then it's not far, but everyone jumps on a plane and goes down there and then fixes it. And then, there's just a lot to, because this stuff is not going to just happen overnight. So you're going to potentially have engineers staying in Mexico for 3 to 8 months. It just really depends on how long this thing takes to ramp. So yeah, huge win for Tesla to be getting these permits. And we all know that they're doing stuff in Austin right now on this thing. It was shared in an Elon Musk biography that they've been working on it for a minute. So all right, let's jump into a couple of other things to get into. So Best Western, this was just a small, it's just these, small little tidbits of just like signs of the future, right? Best Western signed a deal to have 2,000 hotels with EV super or charging stations. So again, it's like Tesla is going to become, I think, the new gas station. They're going to become the new thing that every company is going to want to have, whether you're a hotel, potentially even like movie theaters. Target's already worked out deals with them. Even BP signed that big deal with them. What was $100 million to set up this charging stations, or they bought $100 million worth of equipment from them. So it's just one of those things where Tesla continues to just, they're making inroads. Everyone at this point is, as Joe would say, is kissing the ring. But it's just one of those things where this is a big deal. It's just like now they're getting household brands to come and buy their stuff. Again, not only their stuff, their charging equipment, but this is just going to make the adoption for EVs even better. Because right now you might find 1 or 2 hotels, depending on where you're going, with a charging station at night, and typically they're all Tesla in general. But it's just one of those things where this is going to secure that, especially with 2,000 hotels. So I would assume that there's going to be more and more hotels that do this, because we all know that the adoption for EVs is happening, whether people like it or not. So there was that big update for the holiday update. I'm not going to go into all the details, but a couple quick call outs. The Apple Podcasts is now available. Tesla app trip planner, automatic 911 calls, blind spot indicators, more live sentry mode cameras, like more activity there, and then light show, and then a castle doom bad. So there's several things happening, which has been really cool. And then I thought this was really interesting. I think it's, Tesla is, they're not leaving any stone unturned, right? We know that they have several deals with like companies like Hertz. Even now they're doing stuff with Uber to incentivize the Uber drivers. I think Uber drivers know the maintenance on these cars is fairly cheap, and so they're doing things with Uber to get that rolling through. Here, let me just make sure. I think I'm just checking to see. Okay. And then this was a fun one too, right? If you ever need to drive through hell, make sure you stop for a charge. This was, we typically don't share too many superchargers, but that was a fun one. And then I think just to wrap things up, because we kind of had a hard 9 o'clock stop. Joe, I'll throw this to you. I don't know if you want to hit this slide. You're on mute. You're still on mute.
Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, so yeah, I think when we talk about the S curve, and I know a lot of people hit on that as we wrap up today. This is just something that Tony Seba talked about, and the exponential curve of this is still, even though we've just reached this plateau, right, of over 1 million vehicles, electrified vehicles. You know what I mean? But even though we're at this inflection point, I mean, there are still like over 90% of people that have not adopted it. I mean, and that's just looking at these numbers, that's insane to think about. That's why I really wanted to throw this in there, because it's just really at the beginning stages of this. I mean, that's just wild. I don't know if Hans has something to say to finalize it, but I just thought that was just incredible to think about.
I mean, the only thing that I would add to there is just look at how small the plug-in hybrid amount is compared to the BEV, and that's because it's just not the right technology that is scalable. If it was, it would be, significantly ahead. So it's cool to see the pure BEVs just trouncing the plug-in hybrids. They were a good technology proof case to get it started, but now it's all electric and it's clear.
Definitely. Well, yeah, thank you all for tuning in. I know we've been off the past couple of weeks, so the next couple Fridays, we should be good to go over the holidays, but we'll keep you informed. Thank you to Hans for coming in last minute, for always dropping your knowledge. Make sure you give him a follow, subscribe to his channel as well on YouTube. He's at Hans C. Nilsson on X. I'll make sure to go and update the YouTube description with his channel as well in the special guest section, but I did post his X account. But either way, give him a follow, patronize him, and thank you again for tuning into the Tesla Beat this week. Have a great week, everyone.